For spine-chilling true horror tales revealed, sinister secrets and haunted experiences exposed. Sarah Thompson blinked against the fading daylight, her heart pounding as she approached her home in the serene suburb of Maplewood, a place that seemed plucked from a storybook. But that evening, a sense of foreboding gripped her. "Beware of the Grayson," the hastily carved words on her door screamed like a siren. They were crude, but they oozed a sinister warning, sending chills spiraling down her spine. She shook her head, trying to brush the feeling aside. She was exhausted. Another long night shift waiting to swallow her whole. It only got worse. Tracking her son Daniel's footsteps around the neighborhood, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mr. Grayson, the affable old man everyone trusted, was hiding something dark. "He just wants to teach me how to fix things, Mom," Daniel would say, unbothered by the whispered fears snaking through the community like a dark fog. Each time her son spoke of Mr. Grayson, the smiley face of the old man morphed into something unrecognizable in Sarah's mind, twisting into a grotesque grin lurking just below the surface. Then came a call that shattered her already strained reality. "Daniel's missing," she gasped, fear clawing at her throat as the authorities shrugged off her panic. "Boys your son's age often go explore." The dismissive wave of their hands felt like a violent storm washing away her voice. Desperate, she turned to the neighbors, those who often exchanged pleasantries by their pristine lawns. But now those smiles felt like masks, hiding sinister truths behind tightly drawn curtains. As she began connecting the unsettling dots, how Mr. Grayson seemed to coerce Daniel into his home, his warm invitation a facade for something much darker, her heart raced painfully. She remembered the whispers about other families who vanished, leaving behind only shadows and legends soaked in dread. Days turned into nights, each moment thick with the weight of unspoken fear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. On a storm-battered night, lightning sliced through the sky, illuminating the darkened streets of Maplewood. Sarah felt the weight of fear pulling her down around her. The neighborhood whispered a collective secret too terrible to unveil. Shadows burgeoned around her as she made that fateful decision to confront Mr. Grayson. Clutching a flashlight tightly, she steeled her resolve, each step toward his door echoing like the ticking clock of a nightmare waiting to unfold. Finally, she stood there, heart pounding in cadence with the rain drumming against the pavement. As she reached for the knocker, a chilling breeze swirled around her, and the door creaked open slowly, revealing the black void within. "Sarah," a voice beckoned from the darkness, familiar yet utterly wrong. Her breath hitched, every instinct screaming at her to turn back, but she stood frozen, vulnerable and teetering on the edge of a yawning abyss of terror. In that moment, she realized the folklore that had haunted others now reached out towards her, threatening to entangle her in its merciless grasp. What awaited her in that shadowy home filled with secrets? She was about to uncover a nightmare that would redefine her world forever. Would stepping inside reveal the truth or seal her fate? The darkness within Mr. Grayson's home loomed like a hungry beast, waiting for Sarah to cross the threshold. The voice whispered again, almost pleading, "Come in, Sarah." It sent waves of nausea crashing over her. Was Daniel inside? Was he safe? Her pulse quickened, the fear morphing into desperation. She took a shuddering breath and stepped over the threshold, almost tempted to call out for her son. The door swung shut behind her with a resounding thud that echoed through the void. The flashlight beam sliced through the black, exposing peeling wallpaper spotted with stains, some old, some fresh. The air reeked of something metallic, like rust and decay. "Daniel?" she called, her voice trembling as it echoed back to her in a mocking cadence. There was silence, thick and heavy, until a scuffling sound emanated from the rear of the house. Sarah's heart raced, her breaths shallow and rapid. She inched forward, feeling the wallpaper tug at her fingertips like ghastly hands. The beam of her flashlight flickered ominously, bathing her surroundings in sudden shadows that twisted with every step. Daniel? She swallowed, the name thick on her tongue. Each syllable felt like an invocation, summoning both hope and dread. The scuffling became more pronounced. It sounded like something or someone being dragged across the floor. Sarah's feet felt glued to the ground while adrenaline surged through her limbs. She broke into a sprint, desperation filling her veins. Daniel! Voices murmured from all directions, trapping her in their clutches. Turn back, they seemed to plead. It's not safe. A flash of movement up ahead caught her attention. Hope surged as she rushed toward it, her flashlight illuminating a corridor that spiraled deeper into the darkness of the home. She could see the outline of a small figure, a child wobbling in the gloom. Daniel! But just as she reached for him, the shadows seemed to warp and stretch out, swallowing his figure. Panic surged. No! She lunged forward, throwing herself into an impenetrable dark where she felt her illusion of safety crack. The room shifted, walls twisting, and she found herself in a dilapidated kitchen. It was ugly and grotesque, pots rusting on the counter, rotting food piled high in a corner. The stench clawed at her nose. Then she noticed the pictures on the wall, old, yellowed photographs of smiling families. But as she inspected them more closely, the hairs on the back of her neck bristled. The faces were all too familiar. Some were neighbors she'd once known. Others looked like fleeting glimpses of her own family. Sarah, the voice was closer now, and dread wrapped around her like a serpent. She turned, flash illuminating a heavy wooden door slightly ajar. It creaked as if beckoning her inside. A low rumble echoed from beyond, like a growl from something monstrous. Anxiety fought against her courage, sending tremors through her body. Her heart raced as she recalled the warnings whispered among adults at barbecues and lawn parties. No one ever comes back from Grayson's house. She felt the cold sweat trickle down her back. What if she violated the final taboo? What if she didn't just risk her own safety but that of her son as well? Everything inside her screamed to run, to escape back to the safety of the storm, but the warmth of the light from the open door flickered promisingly, pulling her in like a moth to a flame. Footsteps behind her made her spin, the reality of her situation crashing down. Whispers filled the air, growing louder and frantic. Desperation clutched at her throat. Sarah, pleased with a surge of adrenaline, she swung the flashlight toward the door again, the beam trembling. Would she find Daniel or an ancient evil that had awaited her return? The walls breathed as she stepped forward into uncertainty, the door swinging wide, revealing the deepest darkness yet. The pulse of dread hummed in her ears, urging her into the unknown. What would she find? The truth? Or a fate worse than death? As she crossed the threshold, a chilling thought lingered. What if she was not alone in this house of horrors? And what if she was simply the next name on Grayson's list? The door swung open, revealing a narrow staircase spiraling down into obscurity. The air shifted, thick with something indescribable, a damp heaviness that settled onto her skin like a shroud. Sarah hesitated, the light from her flashlight barely piercing the black, but she heard its soft whimpering, the sound of her son's voice. Mom! It sounded muffled, distant, but unmistakably pleading. She took a step down, her breath catching in her throat. Each creak of the stairs echoed in the void, mocking her bravery. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her, twisting her thoughts. He's not here. Leave while you can. It's too late. Sarah fought against the gnawing despair, pushing down the rising tide of panic. She gripped the flashlight tighter, determined to find him. Daniel! I'm coming. Her voice broke, but she called again, desperate to drown out the grotesque symphony of sinister murmurs. The staircase opened into a large cellar, its walls slimy and stained. The beam of her flashlight caught glimpses of what looked like forgotten furniture, shattered tables, broken chairs, all coated in a layer of dust and something worse. In the center, she spotted shapes against the wall, burlap sacks, hunched and misshapen. Her heart pounded wildly. Were those bodies? Mom, the sound, softer now, came from the far corner. She edged toward it, her mind screaming for her to turn back. The shadows danced like restless spirits. The whispers transformed into gasps, suggesting her heart was racing too loudly for anyone to hear. Sweat trickled down her spine as she approached the source. Panic washed over her when she saw it, a small figure, curled up, trembling. "Daniel!" she cried, racing toward him. As she knelt beside the boy, her flashlight flickered out, plunging them into a suffocating darkness. "Mom?" His voice cracked, filled with fear. "I'm here," she reassured him, gripping his shoulder. But the moment her fingers touched him, a bitter chill swept through the air, and an otherworldly growl erupted from the darkness, vibrating through Sarah's core. "You shouldn't have come," it rasped, sending spikes of terror down her spine. She turned, wide-eyed, to see the outline of something massive looming before them, its form pulsing like a dark cloud, shifting and morphing in the blackness. Panic welled in her throat. "What do you want?" she shouted, pushing Daniel behind her. Her legs trembled, rooted to the spot. "Your sacrifices feed us. You should have stayed away." The voice dripped with malice, echoing off the damp stones. Before she could comprehend the meaning, Daniel's grip loosened, and he staggered back, confusion painted across his face. "Mom, I think it's scared." "Scared?" she echoed, uncertainty prickling at her instincts. "Why would it be scared?" Before Sarah could answer, the creature drew closer, a terrible scream reverberating off the walls. The sound shattered her thoughts, penetrating the very fabric of her being. "Leave now, or you will lose him." Without hesitating, she grabbed Daniel's hand and pulled him toward the staircase, but the darkness surged, clawing at them like 1,000 icy fingers. The growling intensified, merging with the echoes of distant laughter that seemed to drown their escape. Heart racing, she stumbled her way back, urging Daniel forward. The air thickened, pressing down like a weight. "Run!" she screamed, crashing up the stairs, fueled by a desperate hope that they could escape. As they burst into the kitchen, Sarah turned to glance back at the cellar door. The darkness writhed, and a flash of hidden eyes stared back at her before the door slammed shut, sealing whatever horrors lay within. But as she exhaled a shaky breath of relief, the whispers returned more frantic, more insistent. "You can't leave, not yet." In that crushing moment, Sarah understood, escaping from Grayson's house was only the beginning of something far worse. The shadows still hunted them, and now, they were changing. "What do we do, Mom?" Daniel's wide eyes met hers, filled not just with fear, but an unshakable realization that their nightmare was just beginning. "Whatever it is, we face it together," she answered, her voice a trembling promise, though doubt gnawed at her heart. But in the distance, a low growl resonated again, and Sarah knew there was something waiting for them, ready to unveil a darkness deeper than either of them could comprehend. Would they truly leave Grayson's haunting shadow, or were they marked as its next prey? The moment they stepped back into the kitchen, Sarah felt the air shift again, alive, electric, and thick with dread. The flickering lights above them buzzed, flickering like frightened fireflies, and the chill in the room deepened. Daniel clung to her, his small body trembling against her. Panic rose like bile in her throat. "Mom, I can't breathe," he whispered, eyes wide and glossed over with unshed tears. She squeezed his hand, willing him to find calm in her strength. "Just breathe, honey. Focus on me," she said, her own breath coming in ragged gulps. But the house had a heartbeat. The walls seemed to close in. Shadows crawled unnaturally, stretching, pulsing, as if responding to their fear. It was coming for them, she could feel it. "Why did it want you to leave?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but we need to protect each other." She quickly scanned the kitchen for anything they could use, any means of defense. The knife block caught her eye, gleaming like a beacon amidst the chaos. Stay close, she instructed, and before he could respond, she darted to the block, grabbing the largest knife. The metallic weight felt reassuring in her palm, solid, a small comfort in the overwhelming terror. As she turned, the whispers rose again, filling the air like a poisonous haze. It has come to collect. The voice curled around her, slithering into her mind. We take what is ours. Stop it. Sarah screamed, thrusting the knife in front of her. Leave us alone. But the shadows drew closer, merging into a thick mass at the edge of the kitchen. Eyes glimmered from within, hundreds of them, hungry and expectant. Mom, what's happening? Daniel's voice trembled with fear, each word a plea. I don't know. I don't know. She cried, desperation clawing at her chest. The shadows whispered his name now. Daniel, please, he whimpered, pressing against her, and then it happened. The wall behind them shuddered, cracks spider webbing across its surface like skeletal fingers reaching for them. Something big pressed against it, a massive shape shifting and writhing, a hulking silhouette that seemed to absorb the light. The growl reverberated again, and Sarah felt the floor tremble beneath her feet. Without thinking, she threw her arm around Daniel, pushing him forward. Run to the door. They raced across the kitchen, adrenaline pumping in their veins. But as they reached the threshold, it slammed shut, trapping them inside. No! Sarah cried, pounding against the wood, dread spilling into wild panic. Open. Please. Mom. Daniel cried. His face drained of color. Look. Her heart dropped as she followed his gaze to the darkness spreading across the walls. It reached for them with elongated, claw-like fingers. Each shadow seemed to separate, forming faces, a grim assembly of lost souls etched in terror. That was when she saw it. The burlap sacks from the cellar. They were here, slumped against the far wall in the kitchen, shifting and moaning. They're the sacrifices, Sarah muttered, a sick realization dawning. The shadows were life, but they thrived on despair, on fear, on life itself. And now, they had come for Daniel. Run! She shouted again. We have to get out. Suddenly, the air cracked with an otherworldly scream, a sound so loud it ripped through her eardrums. The darkness surged, lashing out like a living thing. Blindly, they stumbled away from the door, seeking refuge in the chaos, but then she felt its cold fingers grip her ankle, dragging her backward. Mom! Daniel, run! He turned, but his feet were stuck in place. Horror etched on his face as he witnessed his mother being pulled into the shadows. Her screams cut through the chaos, desperate and piercing. Go! She cried, forcing out the words before the darkness swallowed her words whole. Daniel, frozen in fear, desperately looked for a way out. But the shadows were everywhere, pressing in, hungry whispers climbing over each other to steal away his courage. In that moment, he realized light, the tiniest flicker, was the only chance. With tears sliding down his cheeks, he turned away from his mother's frantic cries and dashed for the window. The faint moonlight outside bathed the room as he flung it open, the cool night air glaringly present as hope ignited within him. But before he could climb through, a dark wind spiraled, the whispered voices wrapped around him. Leave him, stay here. Daniel took a shaky breath and hesitated, the battle of shadow and light raging in his heart. The split second stretched, a pivotal moment that could seal his fate. What awaited him outside? Freedom or an even deeper darkness? He had to decide. Would he flee into the unknown or confront the terror that twisted his world? Mom! He screamed, knowing he had to choose. But was it already too late? The moonlight seemed almost mocking as it spilled into the kitchen, illuminating the chaos and shadows swirling around Daniel. He could hear his mother's distant cries, twisted in agony, a sound that clawed at his mind. The oppressive darkness thickened, whispering sweetly, promising safety if he just surrendered. Mom! He shouted again, but his voice felt like an echo, swallowed by the encroaching gloom. Fear clutched him like a vice. He could feel the cold sensation threading through his body, inviting him to stay, urging him to listen to the darkness. Leave stay the voices, now a chorus of sorrow, surrounded him. It once he heard if you stay he could see the shadows do horrific dances, curling and twisting into forms that resembled lost friends and family figures he thought he'd left behind. Was this a hallucinatory haze playing tricks on him? He stumbled back, eyes darting, desperate for escape from the gnawing voices that now mingled with the scent of decay. Willing himself not to look back, he focused on the window, the moonlight a beacon above the chaos. The urgency screamed in him, every second felt like an eternity of horror. Suddenly, he felt a presence beside him, a company of darkness. A heavy breath brushed against his neck, a soft murmur slipping through the blackness. Why do you want to leave? Here, you will feel love. The weight of it all struck him. Were the shadows trying to convince him that this was better, that surrender was the answer? No! He shouted, shaking his head fiercely. Panic surged, and he lunged toward the open window, arms outstretched. I want to let you take me. But the moment his foot stepped closer to escape, a clawed hand shot out, grabbing his ankle. The cold fingers gripped like iron, pulling him back into the void. He struggled, kicking, tears streaming down his cheeks. Daniel, the whisper was drawn, curling around him like smoke. You'll come back to us, you need us. The shadows began to swirl faster, creating a whirlwind of despair. His heart hammered in his chest, each beat a reminder of everything he fought for: his mother, his life before this nightmare. With every ounce of strength left in him, he reached for the knife Sarah had dropped, lying beside the wall where the shadows writhed thickest. I want to let you take me. He screamed, seizing the blade. It felt powerful, the steel a knife against the encroaching darkness. With a primal scream, he swung it wildly, each arc a desperate plea for freedom. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the knife, radiant and sharp, cutting through the darkness, pushing the shadows back like a tide. No! The hushed voices screamed, their unity fracturing as they shrieked in pain, their forms recoiling. Daniel didn't hesitate. He scrambled toward the window, the light trailing behind him like a torch cutting through murky waters, illuminating the path of escape. He felt the weight on his ankle loosen, the shadows dissipating under the furious glare. He could hear a roar now, the dark creature behind him, angry and vengeful. You cannot escape. It bellowed, a sound that shattered glass and rattled bones. But he didn't stop. He leaped through the window, landing hard on the grass below. The cool air wrapped around him, and he nearly sobbed in relief. Freedom. He had survived. But as he turned back, breathless, heart racing, he saw the angry silhouette form briefly at the kitchen window, pouncing forward as if aware of his flight. Within its gaze, he spotted the twisted face of his mother. Come back, Daniel, it echoed, pulling at his heart. What have I done? He whispered to the night, the truth dawning on him: the darkness would not let go so easily. Could he really escape? Had he just escaped one nightmare, only to awaken into another? With a shiver creeping down his spine, he realized the most terrifying truth of all: the hunt wasn't over. How far would he have to run before the shadows would stop? What horror lay ahead in the darkness to follow? The grass felt damp beneath Daniel's fingertips as he rolled away from the house, his heart pounding in his ears. He forced himself to breathe, but each inhalation brought him closer to panicking. The shadows he had flung himself from lurked just beyond the edges of the dim light, teasing him with promises of dread. It was a relentless darkness, hungry for his return. Where do I go? He murmured, pushing himself to his feet. The street in front of him lay cloaked in the inky shadows of night, devoid of any sound aside from the echoes of his own heartbeat. He had to move. He took a step, and another, heading down the familiar path toward the only place that still held any semblance of safety: the old diner at the corner. With each footfall, anxiety prickled his skin. Memories clawed at him, of late-night visits for burgers and fries, laughter echoing off greasy tiled walls. They felt impossibly distant, almost like fragments of another life. The wind picked up, swirling around him, carrying whispers that scraped his mind. "Come back, it's better here, we can be together, shut up," he hissed, shaking his head. He pressed on, ignoring the echoes of the shadows that hunted him, their talons now just a rustling ghost in the wind. As he hurried past darkened houses, something flickered on the periphery of his vision. Shapes tangled and writhed beneath streetlights, but he dared not to look. The diner was close, he could almost taste the stale coffee and sizzling bacon. It would be his refuge. Finally, he rounded the corner to find the diner alive, lights flickering to life within. The neon sign flickered and buzzed, its luminescence a halting comfort amid the chaos. Relief surged through him. He reached for the door, heart hammering, but stopped short. Inside, the familiar chatter of the late-night crowd buzzed, laughter spilling over plates of fries and shakes. Yet, something felt wrong. The shadows were not just outside, they had seeped in here. Guests wore faces twisted with despair, eyes darting around like they were being hunted. Their laughter turned hollow, echoing with dark intent. A waiter approached, his face obscured by thick shadows swirling around him. "You're back, Daniel," he said, a smile pulling at his lips, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We've been waiting for you." Daniel stepped back instinctively, the words wrapping around him like chains. "No, I can't." The moment he turned to flee, the walls of the diner began to ripple, warping as though the structure itself breathed with life. Shadows leaped forth from the corners, reaching out with claw-like fingers, closing in around him. Suddenly, a sharp piercing sound sliced through the air, a shriek frozen in time. His mother's voice echoed, but it was laced with malice. "Daniel, come home." His pulse quickened. The very fabric of the diner quivered as if ready to collapse, walls oozing darkness. He didn't want to remember, to feel that pull again. With every ounce of willpower, he ducked beneath the hands grasping for him and burst through the door just as it slammed shut behind him, sealing off the nightmare within. The night air wrapped around him, and he took off running, the diner growing smaller in his periphery. Desperation clawed at his throat. The streetlights flickered ominously, the world around him going dark as the shadows seemed to plunge deeper into night without end. He needed a plan, but his mind swirled with uncertainty. Could it get worse? He pushed through the fear, the doubt. Then, he heard an ominous rustling, like whispers of the darkness, creeping in from both sides of the street. They weren't only shadows, they were shapes of lost souls weaving through the empty spaces around him. Then he saw movement. Figures emerging from the darkness, faces of those he thought he had lost, twisting in anguish, pleading for anything, but he sensed their malice. "Daniel," they sang softly, voices like poisoned honey. "Stay with us." He stumbled back, dread spilling over. He would die if he surrendered, but their eyes glimmered with something much darker. What could he do? The truth unfurled. The shadows had made their choice, and they would not let him go without a fight. "Run," he whispered to himself. But where? As the figures closed in, breathing heavy and filled with despair, Daniel's mind raced with a singular thought: what price would he have to pay to escape this horror? The darkness hungered, and he could sense it moving closer. What lay ahead among the shadows? What hell was yet to come? Daniel ran, his breath coming in ragged gasps, each step echoing in the oppressive silence of the night. He wished he could outrun the shadows, but they clung to him, whispering promises and threats, tearing at the edges of his sanity. The faces had morphed into grotesque caricatures of those he once loved, reminders of a life he could no longer recognize. "Daniel," they sang again, their voices wrapping around him like a noose. "Come to us, we need you." He shook his head violently, as if that would drown out their siren call. The street stretched before him, endless and cold, and he knew he had to escape the familiarity of the neighborhood. It was too suffocating, too steeped in memories. He dashed toward the alley that separated the diner from the old hardware store. It was an unlit path, overgrown with weeds and littered with remnants of the past, but it offered a brief reprieve from the scrutiny of the shadows. As he stepped into the alley, he felt it close in around him. The walls seemed to rise taller, the night deeper. A wave of stench hit him, rotting and musty. He gagged but pressed on, aware that the sounds of pursuit grew closer. Was it his imagination, or did the walls breathe with malevolence, nudging him to turn back? "Stay with us!" Even the bricks echoed their plea, the very ground beneath him calling out for his surrender. He shivered, fighting the urge to collapse into despair. He reached the end of the alley, where it opened up into a small, deserted lot. An ancient oak tree stood there, twisted and gnarled, its branches reaching like skeletal fingers toward the moon. He could almost swear it was watching him. Desperation fueled his movement as he searched for the other side, looking for a way out. Suddenly, laughter cracked through the silence. It danced around him like a cruel specter, taunting and teasing. "Why so far from home, Daniel?" A figure stepped from the shadows, her face indistinct but familiar. It was a girl, a friend from school, lost to the darkness long ago. "Don't you remember the fun we used to have? Get away from me!" Daniel yelled, the words tearing from his throat like a desperate plea. His legs felt heavy, like they were made of stone, but he had to keep moving. The laughter transformed into wails, a cacophony of sorrow that filled the night air. He felt their cold breath against his skin, the touch of despair that seeped into his bones, weighing him down. He ran, forcing his legs to carry him toward the road that twisted away from the lot. As he broke free, a blinding light shot through the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. A car. Hope surged, a fragile flicker in the choking void. He sprinted toward it, waving his arms frantically. "Help! Please!" The car screeched to a halt just shy of him, and the driver's eyes went wide with terror. They didn't see the car, they saw the shadows swarming around him, their forms darting in and out of view. "No! Get back! It's not safe!" The driver shouted, stepping on the gas, the tires screeching as the car sped away, leaving Daniel alone again, the gloom closing in around him once more. Panic flared anew. He backed away from where the car had been, searching for the refuge of the diner. His heart sank. It was still there, looming like a malevolent beast, doors ajar as if inviting him back, but he knew. He knew what awaited him inside those walls, deeper than mere hunger. They wanted him, a dark heart of shadows with an insatiable need for something he couldn't give. "Stay with us," the voices whispered again, their tone now a furious chant. "Stay with us, stay!" The shadows writhed, growing bolder, reaching out to him with claw-like fingers, eager to trap him in eternal darkness. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes, he could feel the weight of his own decisions crushing him. It was not just escape he needed, he had to confront what they wanted. With a shuddering breath, he turned back, the oak tree behind him casting a long shadow that danced with his every move. He would face them. He would find out what awaited him in the darkness, even if it meant losing everything or discovering the secret that had kept him running all this time. The question loomed as he stood alone, heart pounding in defiance. What truth lay hidden within the very shadows he had fled from? What was the cost of his release? Daniel steadied his breath, the air thick with dread. He could feel their presence tightening, an insidious warmth creeping closer. He squinted into the abyss, searching for clarity amidst the chaos. The oak tree loomed behind him, but it was just a tree. Nothing more. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the creeping feeling of being watched. "Why are you doing this?" he shouted into the emptiness. The shadows recoiled for a moment as if surprised by his resolve, then surged forward with renewed vigor. "What do you want from me?" "Your soul, your pain," they hissed, the cadence slick and dripping, echoing off the brick walls of the diner. "We exist in your darkness. You have to let go." Let go? The words reverberated in his mind. To let go was to surrender everything, to cede control to the very thing he feared most. He took a step back, his heart tripping over a surge of panic. But he couldn't run. Not again. Instead, he dove deeper into the suffocating embrace of the shadows that flickered just at the edge of his vision. He gritted his teeth and walked forward, familiar faces flickering momentarily before him, friends, family, even a faded memory of laughter. Each visage morphed into a grotesque reminder of sorrow, the love twisted by despair. "Face it, Daniel," he yelled, voice quaking. "Face it. You can't keep this from me." Suddenly, they were their phantoms drifting under the pale moonlight, their mouths twisted into silent screams. Their eyes were dark hollows, filled only with the emptiness Daniel had buried deep within himself. He was among them now, trapped in a funeral of memories, and all around, shadows danced like marionettes cut from their strings. As he felt their cold fingers graze his arms, a contented murmur spread through the lot. It was intoxicating. The sadness lingered like cigarette smoke, warm at first, then stifling. Desperate, Daniel pulled away, trying to shake off their grip. He remembered the warmth of the sun on his skin, a momentary refuge from the chaos. "Let me go," he shouted, voice wavering. "You don't own me." But deep down, he felt the truth, they did. They held every secret, every regret like a bargaining chip, and not just from him. He thought of what awaited him in the diner, the dark corners, the secrets coiling in the shadows. The air hummed with a low growl, an echo of his despair and doubt. "You can't escape the past," a voice crooned, pulling him closer. "You have to remember." A vision ripped through his mind, a night filled with laughter that had turned to screams. Friends, bickering over a silly game, shadows creeping up the walls. He had lost his grip on reality as the calm turned violent, a family torn apart by what should have been innocent fun. His heart raced, panic flooding him as memories clawed their way back, demanding attention. "Stop!" Daniel screamed, clutching his head in anguish. The darkness chattered excitedly, relishing his pain. "I can't." In that moment, another fragment seized him. A face flickered, the girl from the shadows, eyes wide and void of hope, whispering a name that lodged itself in his throat. Maggie. He had turned away, lost to anger. And now, that choice echoed around him, twisting like a knife. They needed him to acknowledge the truth, to confront the horrors in his heart and break the cycle. He could almost taste the desperation in the air. "Release me," he howled, not caring if anyone could hear, if the shadows would answer. But with a cacophony of laughter, they only tightened their grip, circling him like vultures. Hope faded, darkness loomed larger, and Daniel felt like bait dangling in a trap. He was on the brink of revelation, yet tethered to the past. But could he find the strength to confront it? The shadows pulsed with hunger, and Daniel stood, teetering on the edge of revelation or ruin. What awaited him if he turned back to face the demons? What truth did he still hide? "Tell me," he breathed, heart pounding. "What more could you take from me?" Daniel's breath quickened, each inhalation a desperate gasp in the choking darkness. The feelings swirled around him, blistering and biting. He squeezed his eyes shut, lips pressed together in a futile attempt to block out the cacophony of shadows that writhed and whispered. "Is this how it ends?" he murmured. "Among ghosts of my own making?" For a moment, silence fell. The shadows seemed to hold their breath, waiting just as he was. But then they surged forward, a tide of despair crashing into him, drowning out his thoughts, puncturing deep into his very essence. "Face them, Daniel." The unseen voice echoed again, sharper this time. "Face what you fear the most." The pain nestled inside him burned brighter. His heart hammered against the cage of his ribs as memories crashed into him, an avalanche of regret and heartache. Each laugh from the past resonated like a sharp blade, twisting until he could hear Maggie's laughter morphing into a wail. "Why didn't I save you?" he choked out, clenching fists bound by terror. "Save her? You couldn't even save yourself," they hissed, a simmering venom threading through their tone. "You chose to shut her out just like you do with all of us. And now? Now we will take what's left." The shadows coiled tighter, their grasp suffocating. A glitch in the fabric of the air shuddered lightly, as if reality itself were wavering. He looked around, desperate for an escape, but all paths were shrouded in darkness. "Look!" A voice finally blared from the void, rich with menace. Look at what you've made of this life. As an invisible hand swept across the ground, Daniel felt a sudden chill creep through his ankles, solidifying into forms, shadows transforming into hazy figures that began to artfully unfurl. They lined up, stretching into a gruesome replica of his past, the faces of those he loved, those he had abandoned, now leering at him, sorrow mingled with fury. Enough! Daniel roared, pushing through the blur of memories, each one a stab to his soul. He took a step forward, unsteady yet defiant. I won't let you torment me. Torment? They shrieked, laughter rolling around like thunder. You have prepared this banquet of suffering, not us. He squeezed his eyes shut, visualizing the warmth of sunlight on his skin, how it kissed his flesh with life. But now, it felt as distant as a fading echo. Summoning that image fiercely, he opened his eyes. The figures wavered but didn't vanish. Maggie! He cried, searching within the jumbled memories for her essence among the wailing agony. I see you. I hear you. A sudden blaring silence dropped like a stone. The shadows froze. With every desperate heartbeat, memories shifted, revealing moments of joy intertwined with agony. The light blossomed around the edges, flickering against the dark backdrop. She is with you, a figure whispered, this one brighter, hopeful. Daniel found himself stepping towards it, propelled by something other than fear. The air sparkled with possibility. Let me break free. He urged, stretching a trembling hand towards the figure, the outline of Maggie more pronounced now. But as he reached out, something urgent crackled through the air, the shadows shuddered, coiling tighter. You think you can escape? They hissed, venomous. You have to let go of her or feel her pain eternal. Daniel hesitated, a moment stretched into eternity, caught between the shadows that clawed at him and the flicker of light, a beacon in the void. The weight of choice pressed heavily against his chest, a diseased heart thumping wildly. Let her go, he whispered to himself. The darkness pulsed with anticipation, a beast hungry to devour him whole. Just as he opened his mouth to answer, a loud crash erupted from within the diner behind him, a deafening boom that shook the very air he breathed. What now? Daniel thought, panic solidifying within him. A tremor ran down his spine. In the distance, a shadowy figure broke through the glass door, panting as if escaping from something worse. This wasn't over. He turned back to the figures and the madness surrounding him. Would he join the light, or be dragged deeper into the darkness? Daniel chose, the voice echoed, laced with dread. Choices loomed, terror clawed at him. What awaited him in the diner? Would it shatter his hopes or shackle him further into despair? The question hung in the air. Before he could decide, the door creaked open wider, revealing a silhouette of a figure framed in chaos. Help! Echoed through the void, a cry laced with familiar anguish. His heart raced. It was Maggie's voice. What had followed her? Daniel's heart nearly stopped as he recognized that ghostly resonance, the sound of despair that twisted around him like a vice. Maggie! He yelled, but his voice faltered, choked by fear and confusion. What had found her? The darkness that cloaked the diner seemed to grow thicker, swirling around him in a sinister embrace. Daniel! She cried again, panic evident in her tone, and a silhouette stepped into the pale moonlight. Maggie, her face etched with torment, hair disheveled but spilling over her shoulders like silk. But he could see the shadows dancing behind her, wrapping around her legs, clawing at her very being. Without thinking, he surged forward, drawn by an overwhelming force that shattered the bonds of dread. I'm coming! He shouted, his legs pumping beneath him as he sprinted toward her. Run! You can't let it catch you! She screamed, her eyes wide with terror. In that instant, the darkness surged forward, a tidal wave of malevolence sweeping toward him. You cannot cross this threshold, it hissed, the voices merging into a chorus of wrath. You are ours, Daniel. No! He shouted, pouring every ounce of defiance into his voice. I want to be yours. As if his words were a trigger, a burst of light erupted from the space between him and Maggie, illuminating the shadows. For a single moment, he saw the faces trapped within, their eyes pleading for rescue, their mouths twisted in silent cries. But their cries were not for help, they were for him to join their eternal suffering that he fought against the urge to look away. I want tea. He shouted, clenching the knife in his hand, its blade sparkling in the shimmering light. I know who I am. I choose to fight. With every heartbeat, the memories of love and laughter surged forward in his mind, fragments of a life he wanted to reclaim, a life unchained from sorrow. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the force of his resolve. He reached Maggie and grabbed her hand, tightening his grip. Don't let go. He cried. Daniel, it's too strong. She was trembling in fear, but his determination cut through her despair. Together, they moved toward the light that shone between them and the shadows. In unison, they shouted, we will not be afraid. And as they did, the darkness reared back, as if repelled by their united strength. With one desperate lunge, they crossed into the circle of light, feeling the shadows claw uselessly at their heels. Keep going. Daniel urged, pulling Maggie with him. Never looking back, they dashed away from the echoes of the past, surging through the alley behind the diner, the world growing brighter as they raced toward the clearing of the old oak tree. The shadows behind them erupted into anguished cries, swirling in a chaotic tempest. Don't stop. He shouted again, determination carving their escape path through the darkness. Finally, they burst into the open field, moonlight bathing them in silvery brilliance. Every breath filled them with renewed courage. But even as they stumbled away, Daniel felt the shadows pull back, coiling angrily, but, for now, unable to chase them into the light. With trembling hands, Daniel turned to Maggie. Are you okay? I think so, she whimpered, glancing back at the tree. They shared an electric connection, a bond forged in the furnace of fear and pain. But instead of retreating into the shadows, he stepped forward, forcing his voice to remain steady. We can't avoid what happened, but we can confront it. Together. Just then, the darkness erupted behind them. The shadows found their voice and screamed in fury, you can't escape. Daniel stood his ground, heart racing but resolute. We will face this together. Maggie nodded, her hand grabbing Daniel's. I'm with you. As those brave words hung in the air, the world shifted again, sunlight creeping into the darkened corners of their minds. It surged through their fingers, enveloping them in warmth and safety. The shadows writhed in frustration, pulling back as if they were allergic to the light. Together, they turned from the chaos. The darkness behind them began to dissolve, changing into motes of dust lost in the golden sunbeams that broke through the darkness. The voices faded gradually, leaving just a whisper, you will always carry us. But they stepped forward. They would not let fear rule them any longer. Hand in hand, they forged a new path, stepping toward the light that would guide them beyond the reach of despair. With determination set firm in their hearts, they ran forward, knowing they were free. That night, as they left behind the terrors of Maplewood and the sinister secrets that dwelled within Grayson's shadows, they learned that facing the darkness, and finding each other, was their ultimate salvation. Never again would they allow the past to consume them. Together, they would write a new chapter, making their own choices filled with light, love, and the strength only true connection could bring. As dawn broke over the horizon, it painted the sky with hues of gold, a promise of new beginnings. Always, they would remember, listen, before you go. This is the moment to show your support. If you loved the story, you need to subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss our next exclusive stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. And don't forget to smash that like button now to keep this story alive and help feed the algorithm. Your support means everything. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how it all ended. I want to hear each and every thought. Lastly, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who could use some spine-chilling tales. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans understand the importance of this community. Let us keep the horror alive together.